Ahoy! Welcome to the Sea Captain Way podcast with Phil Bender and Greg Patton, where we help listeners navigate the uncharted waters of personal and professional growth.
The Sea Captain Way is about energizing top performers to take on risks and push beyond their comfort zone to pursue life-changing goals and achieve peak performance.
We're going to help you build your vision by showing you how to break free of boundaries that are holding you back.
So Phil, we're thrilled to have Sarah Carlan on the Sea Captain Way podcast today. Sarah is a therapist, leadership coach, and career satisfaction mentor who helps her clients rediscover an internal sense of power that cannot be shaken by external events. She holds coaching certifications from Brown University School of Professional Studies and the International Coaching Federation. So welcome, Sarah.
Yeah, welcome, Sarah. Great to have you on. Yeah.
Oh, this is exciting. I love hearing that intro. It's like, oh, right, I do those things.
Right.
Yeah. You're both from the Brown School of Professional Studies, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's
turns
true.
out.
Sing the song before the end of the podcast, maybe. Is there one?
Yeah,
I don't know if Mike's quite gotten to.
I don't know about that, but
okay.
Yeah, we both did go through the Brown study, our professional studies program, and part of their graduate school program, which is really cool, and so we had that connection, and she's also an East Coaster, right?
East Coaster, New Englander.
Yeah, New Englander. So welcome. So great to have you. And again, another shout out for Chris George, one of our coaches who does such a great job of introducing us to fun and exciting people.
Yeah, he's a good connector.
Yeah, he sure is. He really is tremendous that way. So tell us about your coaching practice. What type of clients do you work with, and what kind of services do you provide?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So when I began coaching in 2019, I was really called to coaching. I had been a therapist for a long time, and I was called to coaching because just anecdotally, I had ended up connecting with leaders in the schools and in the nonprofits that I was working in, and was really called they were looking for mentorship or coaching, really advice on how to improve their leadership. And I could see that in helping them improve their leadership, it impacted the whole organization. And it gave me this sense of just so much more scope than I had in working just one-on-one as a therapist. And so I decided that I would pivot to that, and I would focus on folks who were in really purpose-driven professions. So that they were showing up in their work in a way that was like their heart space. Like it was what they were passionate about doing. They couldn't imagine doing anything else, but they were feeling really burned out in the meantime. Over the years, that has developed into a specialty for working with medical professionals, nonprofit leaders, and educational leaders. Right now, the folks that are showing up most predominantly in my coaching space have become medical professionals. Some are for whom are in leadership positions, and some for whom are just out of med school. So I have a number of residents and early career professionals as well. And I'm really supporting them in learning skills for resilience. So how can I navigate rocky waters without feeling like I'm going to drown?
I love that. We should delve more into that in a little bit, because resilience is such a critical part of the coaching element. And having made that switch, one of the things we learned in our program, you probably recall, is coaches believe. The difference between coaching and therapy is coaches believe that the client knows the answer.
Yeah.
And just needs some help getting to it.
Yes.
Where in therapy, they don't always know the answer. And so there's a difference there. And I think it was very significant to me when I determined that element. But having that therapist background must be a tremendous asset to you as you're able to dive in a little deeper with people and help them.
Yeah, I would say it impacts my ability to listen for significant moments in the conversation. And it helps to inform when I see like trauma arise or when
Sure.
I see family dynamics arise. We may not go back to heal those places, but at least that we can name that that's part of what's arising for the client. So that combination of trainings has helped me in that capacity.
Yeah, and I'll add only one thing, Greg, before you ask your question,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the importance of knowing, staying in your lane.
Yeah.
Now, knowing what you know as a therapist,
Mhm.
it might be difficult to go into that space, knowing you may be able to help them, but staying
Mhm.
present. Presence coaching is such a
Yeah.
key piece.
Yeah.
Staying present with people in where they are now versus where they
Right.
have been in their past.
Yeah,
Um,
it's I think as a therapist I was so well trained in boundaries that has supported me in being able to really notice like, oh, this is a therapy moment. Like this is a moment where we could go this direction and it would look like therapy, or we could go in this direction and it would look like coaching.
Very
Mm-hmm.
cool. Interesting.
What do you mean by being well trained in boundaries?
Oh, well trained in boundaries. So therapists, at least the therapeutic modalities that I was trained in, are very religious, for lack of a better word, about being very clear of what is ours and what is our clients,
Mm,
and that it is our job to remain this to really allow the space to be the clients. So we don't share parts of who we are. Like I wouldn't
mm,
share about my family or my life outside of the space that is
mm-hmm.
the therapeutic hour. And I also, in doing that, it's to really make sure that the client knows that this is their time, that they don't have to
Okay.
take care of you, that it's not their obligation to manage your expectations or your ups and downs, that this is really
Okay.
their time. And so I think bringing that into coaching has also helped me as well. But coaching has also let me loosen up a little bit around those boundaries so
Okay.
that if there are moments where I'm self-managing, let's say, I can say like, oh, I'm just letting you know, like I'm self-managing. I've got it. I don't need you to take care of me, but I can share with you that I'm human, right? And that I'm
Mm-hmm.
having this very human experience with you.
Your website says that you provide coaching and group facilitation for
Mm-hmm.
purpose-driven people, and
Yep.
you mentioned that
Mm-hmm.
early on in our conversation. For people and organizations, purpose-driven
Mm-hmm.
people and organizations. Can you expand on this a little bit more?
Yeah. So I think that, when we coach folks individually, it's a really beautiful opportunity for them to really focus on themselves and their own journey. But people don't live in isolation, right? We live in communities. So whether that's work communities or family communities or religious communities, we live in community and in connection. And so I think that having that as part of my area of expertise is important because it helps me hold the client more holistically. But then it also is an additional service that I can offer, right? So I do a lot of team coaching because there are often groups of folks. Like I coached recently a practice of OBGYNs and midwives, right? Who work together to provide services and care for the same patients, but they come to the work from very different perspectives and beliefs and training. And they needed work on how to come together and communicate better. And I could work with, each one of them individually, but really what needed to happen was that the group needed to be able to communicate and move through decision making in a way that felt good to the whole group. And so that's the other aspect of my practice, is that I work not only with individuals but with groups as well.
Yeah, that makes total sense, Greg. We do this quite often with Sea Captain is, when we're working with teams,
Mm-hmm.
performance teams,
Yeah.
then to actually get the entire group involved
Yeah.
in for communication, for
Mm-hmm.
alignment,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure the message is the same. You cannot over communicate as a leader,
No.
and this becomes a great format. So I can see where that's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really great work. And, I've worked with C-suite teams and, our job satisfaction. If you ask most people, like, what do you like about your job? They'll often say like what I do, but many people will also say like the people I work with. And so it's how we work together really impacts people's sense of job satisfaction. And so I think it's important to be able to get into that team coaching space.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. So Sarah, you have training in Brene Brown's Dare to Lead curriculum.
Yeah.
What are some of the skills and practices that you share with your clients from this program?
Yeah, I did her Dare to Lead training in the fall of 2019. And it was really pivotal because it took a very introspective look at leadership, right? So often leadership trainings are about like how to do something external. And her leadership training is really about how to understand yourself better so that you can be a better leader. And that really spoke to my perspective and sensibility, and with my background as a therapist. And so I would say the two takeaways that I use very frequently with clients now are the values exercise. Values exercises are done in a number of different ways, but I really love the way that she does them. And she really has folks narrow it down to 2 or 3 values, where like a lot of values exercises are like a wheel and there's like 8 different values. And her perspective is like, if you have more than 2 or 3 values, you don't have any. It's like priorities. So helping my clients to narrow down to 2 or 3 things gives them a roadmap and a way to evaluate success and a way to decide what boundaries they're going to set and how they're going to set those boundaries. And so whether that's in leadership, in their personal journey, the values work is what I do primarily, but also with the perspective of, that being a great leader is about understanding yourself and how you're showing up in the space.
Yeah, my whole career, I've heard people talk about values and establishing your values and how to articulate them. And I honestly never could figure it out until the way Phil coaches it and the way you explained it and how you articulated in your book, Phil, about talking to your kids. Can you share that with Sarah real quick?
Yeah, Sarah, I think you'll appreciate this. Is I asked one simple question as what are the 3 things your firstborn child comes to you and says, Mom, Dad, I want to be a success. What are the first 3 things you tell them? Those 3 things are that you share with them are core values.
Yeah.
And they're easy to preach. That's why I use the child as an example, but man, are they tough to live every day because they become the ground rules for how you operate. It's how you see the world.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting, Greg, that, and thanks for bringing that up, by the way, because it's interesting to see that, Brene Brown is pushing for, first of all, just a few. Okay. So that you can, so you can own them.
Yeah.
Okay. That you can repeat them. They're not just words on a wall. They mean something to you.
Yes.
But the second piece that I think is really important is this understanding of how they define you. This is what you're going to put up with. This is what I'm going to say, you know what? No, I'm out on this, or I'm in on this, and how you connect in relationships and so on. So Sarah, that's really cool.
Yeah. And I just, I want to echo that because we've also been using them as a measure for success, because so often our successes are measured externally and we're really dependent on someone else to say, yes, you've done a good job, or no, you haven't done a good job. And to use your values to evaluate what went well and to really combat that negative bias that we have to kind of evaluate what went wrong, and use those values to hone in on what went right.
Yeah. And in essence, self-recognize.
Yeah.
Because when you get to certain levels, level 5 leadership type levels, self-recognition is paramount, because no one, it's the air's pretty thin on the top of Mount Everest, and there aren't a whole lot of people up there. Although nowadays it seems like everybody's up there, but you get the idea. So now you were recently a guest on a podcast called The Act of Coaching, where you talked about the power of an evidence-based approach to working with clients and how it helps nurture self-compassion. Tell
Mm.
us more about this evidence-based process you're referring to.
Yeah. So when I'm deciding what tools or philosophies I'm going to incorporate into my coaching, I always want to make sure that they're not just someone's great idea that happens to resonate with me. I want to make sure that there has been some due diligence around understanding why this works. So Brené's work is a great example. Carol Dweck's work is another amazing example of folks who had a sense of like, I think this will work, but let me dig into the why. And they've done some really amazing grounded theory research to really unearth why this works with humans, right? Like, why do we need to evaluate? Like, why do we need to have three values, right? Like Brené, it's not just her great idea, right? She's done research to demonstrate that there's much more drift if we have more than three values, right? And so when I talk with my clients about these things or I introduce them to concepts, I want to make sure that there is evidence to demonstrate that there's good thinking at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That evidence might change. We might have better thinking in 10 years or whatever, but right now that this is grounded in some evidence.
Interesting.
Yeah. But the compassion piece, I
Yeah.
think, were you asking about that compassion piece as well?
Yeah.
Self-compassion. Yeah. So I think that's really, it's driven philosophically, obviously through, many philosophical teachings over the years have been grounded in this idea that self-compassion actually drives a different kind of energy than kind of allowing our inner critic to the inner critic is like, as coaches, we know this, but like the inner critic often has good intentions, right? It's like, it's meant to kind of keep us on task, keep us going. But it's often a very negative energy, right? It's like, it's really punishing in its ways. And that self-compassion can actually drive a different kind of energy, that really can propel us forward. I had a client just today, actually, who I met with earlier. She had done her values work and was really just feeling pulled in all sorts of different directions in our last session. And then today when we met, she just had this energy about her that was so exciting. And she was making really incredible decisions for herself. And she'd just come back from a vacation and was overwhelmed with emails. And her perspective on it was very different. And I asked her like what had shifted. And she said, I just keep reminding myself that like, I'm going to get it done and that there's good reason that these things got delayed and put off. And, it allowed me to just sit down and kind of methodically and productively move through what could have felt overwhelming. And so that self-compassion really energized her to be productive in a way that the inner critic wouldn't have.
Yeah, that's big. That's big.
Yeah, it's huge.
So, and I, as you're saying it the whole time, I'm like, so what you're saying is just give yourself a break.
Yeah. It's even more because I think oftentimes, especially with like the type A personalities that I often get in my coaching practice, like those high achieving physicians, if you say like, just give yourself a break, like they're like, no. If you give yourself a break, then you're going to like fall down and you'll never get back up again. Right.
Right.
So it's the sense of like, speak to yourself gently with encouragement.
Yeah.
It's like the voice they can resonate with.
Yeah. I have a sibling that's very type A and he will call me, he has a journalism degree. He will call me and ask for writing advice. And a couple of years ago, he calls me, he goes, "Hey, Greg, does anal retentive have a hyphen?" I'm like, well, if there's a word after it that it's modifying, then yes, it does, Jim.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. So Sarah, you offer signature presentations on boundary setting, defining value, and finding more ease at work. What are the specific topics you cover during these presentations? Can you give us some examples?
Yeah. So my boundary setting talk is interesting because I take folks through the values exercise first, because I think that we can't really know what boundaries, even we were to begin to setting boundaries if we don't understand what our values are.
Yeah.
And then I help them to see that we often think about boundaries as walls, right? It's like what we're going to say no to. But I really see boundaries as bridges, as an opportunity to connect with yourself, connect with other people, and to have a more authentic relationship. And if you base what boundaries you're going to set on your values, then people can see it's just true for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus kind of feeling like, I have to be the parent who says, I used to like the parenting, metaphor, but like, I have to be the parent whose kid just listens when they say no, but there's no why behind it. They just, they just listen when I say it. And so those types of boundaries with people don't come across as authentic. They just come across as like rigid and confusing. And so those are the things we work with in that talk.
Okay.
Boy, that's big. That's a big one, Greg, when you think about it.
Yeah, well, that was definitely my dad's style of parenting. My dad was a Marine, and he was a disciplinarian extraordinaire. And the answer when he always said, "Because I say so."
Yes.
That's the why.
Exactly.
Well,
And whether or not that works in parenting could be another whole podcast, but it certainly doesn't work in work relationships or in friendships,
Sure.
or in other adult relationships.
no, it was a generational approach to I think they called it authority.
Yeah.
I've been fighting through that my entire career. So in your coaching practice, you work with clients to help them understand that their values can be used to help measure metrics. So now we're shifting to values moving into metrics. What type of
For success.
yeah, what type of insights and guidance do you have on this?
Well, I have to just credit one of my medical residents for this brilliant idea. I always do the values exercise with them at the onset of their first year of residency. And then we talk about kind of like, where do your values show up? And this was early on. And when I was creating this program, this residency training program on wellness, and he said, you know what? I've just decided that every time I go into a patient encounter, I'm going to use my value of connection to decide whether this patient encounter went well. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. That's a metric for success. Like
That
you're
sure
using
is.
your values to understand what went well.
That's right.
And there's so much in that space for them that's out of their control, right? Like whether the patient took their medicine, whether they lost weight, whether they, stayed off drugs, whether they, all these things that they're working with is so out of their control. Yet they are evaluated for that they need something that they can ground themselves in to say, like, no matter what else happened, I did this thing. And so for him to name that and really articulate that clearly, it just inspired me. And so I've been using that as a additional use of the values.
I think that's a great application. And I'll share with you, just from a sales performance standpoint, which we do a lot of work in that space.
Yeah.
It's not the outcome, it's the process, of course, right? But it's also, I used to always measure people on how many introductions to new relationships they got, or referrals.
Yeah.
And only to find out that actually how many times you're asking, did you bring value? Which starts the process of getting introduced to someone new. So we move that from how many times are you asking for introductions to how many times, or excuse me, what kind of results are you getting from asking for introductions,
right,
to how many times are you asking purposeful to make that happen. And that's what I heard with your intern. Our resident, excuse me, is the resident saying, look, all I can control is my asking.
Yes.
In what ways did I connect?
Yes.
And
that's really critical. And I think, Greg, that'll help you in your dating right there.
I knew it. We almost made it all the way through without Phil bringing my lack of love life into it. Damn it.
Just a simple process of
I could see you light up when she said that, and I thought, wow, and I didn't realize because you were gonna reload on it.
The wheels turning, Greg. He was I'm ready.
I can take it at this point.
We could hardly get
through
an
hurt,
episode.
I guess, right?
It couldn't hurt. But well, that's awesome. So as we put as we put a bow on this thing today, first of all, great job. I really enjoyed this, and as usual, Greg does such a great job of prepping, and there was obviously a lot of leadership wisdom and
Mhm.
talent to with you, Sarah, in this space. I like the depth of the therapy in the coaching combined.
Mhm.
I thought that was very interesting. So how do people get in touch with you to schedule an introductory session or to
Yeah,
learn more about your private transformational leadership coaching or group coaching services, or
absolutely.
book you for speaking?
Yeah. So all of the above, you can find a link on my website. And my website is sarahcarlan.com. So SarahCarlan.com. Pretty straightforward. And yeah, all the information's on there. There's a link to my Acuity schedule, and you can book a breakthrough session, and we can chat about all of the above: individual coaching, group coaching, speaking.
Yeah. Well, and Greg, anything you want to add?
No, it was a pleasure. I think you might be our most cerebral guest so far. The path you took us down on, it was the Smith part, I think, in the introduction I was paying attention to that maybe influenced. But no, I've really enjoyed this. Thanks for sharing a
Thank
lot of
you.
great insights with us.
Yeah,
Thank
definitely on
you.
the
It's really fun.
yeah, definitely on the emotional intelligence front.
Yeah.
But also, little plug and shout out for ACT's program. We both are
Yeah.
grads of that, and so that's kind of cool as well. Well, have a great rest of your week,
Thank
and thanks for listening in. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Sea Captain Way podcast. If you found the conversation valuable, please like, share, and post a review on your favorite podcast app.
To learn more about Sea Captain and its performance coaching programs, visit us at seacaptaincoaching.com. The link is in the show notes. You can also follow us at Sea Captain Coaching on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening.
Wishing you fair winds and a following sea on your journey.